Greetings, everyone. I am Stephen McBride. I'm the Assistant Director of Graduate Student Success here for the Purdue University College of Engineering. And a lot of the things that I do in my job are focusing on how we can better set up our graduate students for future career opportunities. And so there's a plethora of different type of careers that you all can go into, whether it's faculty positions where you're researching or teaching, into industry roles, or with some sort of government agency or national lab. But really, a lot of these careers, especially if you have a PhD in engineering, you might want to consider doing a postdoctoral position after graduation. And so that's one of the next steps in career opportunities that you may not know as much about as some of the other things that come through. So we're actually joined by 4 current Purdue postdocs that are doing a variety of different things. Some of them are on a similar fellowship, and some of them came here from different backgrounds. So excited to hear about what their journeys have been and to let you all be able to see more about what the life of a postdoc is like after graduation and why you might ought to consider that once you're done with your studies at Purdue as well. And so to begin with this, like I said, we have our 4 current postdocs that are panelists with us today. And so I'd like for each of you to just go through a little bit of your background, who you are, what you did your degrees in, how you found the opportunity to postdoc at Purdue, how long you've been doing that, and then maybe if you know what you want to do next once the postdoc position is complete, you can share that as well. So from the top of my screen, Rhea, you're first. So if you wouldn't mind, just going ahead and start and introducing yourself.
Sure. So my name is Rhea Corder. I am a postdoc here at Purdue, as Stephen mentioned. I joined Purdue in August of 2021. I have a PhD in chemical engineering that I earned from North Carolina State University. My research specializes in rheology, which is the study of flowing materials. So I work with soft solids, gels, and as a postdoc, I'm working with suspensions of particles and adding polymers to them. So I found my postdoc position I'm a fellow here at Purdue. There's a Lillian Gilbreth postdoctoral fellowship that's offered by the College of Engineering. And so there was a flyer that got sent to the graduate students in my department. I looked through some of the available projects that were pitched. I saw that there were 2 advisors pitching a project in a similar research area to what I did my PhD in. So I knew my skill sets would be applicable, but I'd be working with a new type of material. And so there was a growth opportunity for me there. So I applied for the fellowship, I received that, and then I started at Purdue. My career goal is to be a faculty member in engineering, and I'm actually going to be starting at the University of Tennessee in January of next year as a tenure track faculty member in chemical engineering. And so I knew I needed the postdoc coming out of my PhD to get more experience, both on the research side, but also to see how different advisors lead their groups and mentor students. And so I really think my postdoc has set me up for hopefully future success next year.
Yeah, thank you so much for giving us a little bit more about your background and future intentions there for careers. Aishwarya, you're next on the screen here. So if you wouldn't mind, tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey to coming to Purdue.
My name is Aishwarya. So I am also on a similar fellowship as Ria is in, the Gilbert Fellowship. And I earned a PhD in nanoscience and engineering from Indian Institute of Science back in India. And then I came here to pursue my postdoc. So in terms of how I found this fellowship, I would say I always wanted to do something in the field of biomaterials ever since during my PhD. And then I was looking for something where I could use my existing skill sets that I gained during my PhD and also be able to work on a project which would not involve a big, huge learning curve, something that I could easily finish in like 2 to 3 years and learn something and be introduced to the area of biomaterials. So I think when I found some projects, I think this was the most interesting project for me, something that I could utilize my skill set and also learn something new out of it. So that's how I applied to it and I got the fellowship. And my work is on tissue adhesives. So these are materials which could be used to replace sutures and staples in surgery. So these are really interesting materials. Something very interesting about them is that most adhesives are really bad at adhering to wet wet conditions, and that is the biggest challenge in this area actually. So it's a really challenging project, really interesting, and I look forward to working on this even in the future. Like Ria mentioned, I also want to be a faculty member, and I did apply to faculty positions this year, but I wasn't successful. But yeah, I'll try again next year, and hopefully I find a position and be able to work on this again in future.
Yeah, and thank you for that as well. And so next, Ala.
All right, so funny enough, I'm also on the same fellowship. I've been here almost a year, a little less than a year. I got my PhD at Columbia University. I also did a 3-year master's program, which was almost a PhD at University of New Mexico. And I sort of came across this through my own advisor. My advisor here knows my advisor back at my PhD. And so she met with me and told me about the fellowship, and that's how I applied. But at the same time, that was an interesting period for me because I had a lot of different directions I could have went in terms of different postdocs at national labs, and also just going into industry. I work in 3D printing and 3D printing concrete and rheology. I'm part of the same group as Ria on one side. So my field is sort of growing exponentially. And so it was interesting, but Purdue and the fellowship seemed to be the greatest opportunity for me to go into academia. That's why I stuck with it. And my future is undetermined, I guess, is the best answer. I want a faculty position, but like I said, my field is growing very quickly, and industry is becoming more of an option every year.
Yeah, very true. And good luck with that as well. And so finally, Nitin.
Hello, everyone. So Nitin here, and I did my PhD from Indian Institute of Technology, Indore, back in India. And last year in February 2022, I joined Purdue as a postdoc with the joint project, which is for Purdue and Indiana Department of Transportation. And majorly, we are working on a project which is related to the quality of the roads of West Lafayette and Lafayette. So we are majorly working on the quality of the roads, like not in terms of the asphalt concrete, which you used to see. We are working on a underground material, like a subgrade material, soil, how we can improve the quality of the pavement overall in the quality and the testing procedure. So this is how we are working on the one project. Second project, I'm working with co-lead with the professor of Purdue, Professor Antonio Bobbitt, and where we are working on tunnel engineering, how we can do simulations and all numerical simulations in the tunneling and can make earthquake-safe tunnel structures. So before, like 10 years before, we never used to say earthquake impact on the tunnel. But in past 10, 15 years, we have observed many tunnel failures due to earthquakes. So we are going with the analytical simulations and analytical methods and numerical simulation in that particular area. As far as this postdoc is concerned for the Purdue, so it's an interesting story. I was in one conference and I was presenting there. And one of the delegate came from the Indiana Department of Transportation, and he liked my presentation. And we just spoke that time. And the moment he got that project with Purdue, he emailed me, "Hey, Nitin, I'm looking for the postdoc, and this is a project which is similar to your research interest. Do you mind to apply, or do you want to apply?" And so I was lucky enough that I don't have to search this particular postdoc, and this is how I landed up. But yeah, so that's the best story about my postdoc journey, because I won't say it was easy, but yeah, it was quite smooth, and it was easy to come here when you are known and you are working in a similar area where you have worked during your PhD, as Aishwarya mentioned. And coming to all three of the panelists said they have some connection with the RIA. So I also have a connection with the RIA. RIA was a member in the same EACC circle when I was in the last summer course. So yeah, somehow we all are related to RIA now. Thank you.
So glad that we had all of you joining us and sharing the experiences, because even though some of you are doing a similar fellowship, you all had a unique pathway to even finding that opportunity here at Purdue. And there's certainly opportunities for our current graduate students to also do postdoctoral positions in different labs here, but then also seeing where there are other postdoc positions. And each of you are unique in that you're doing your postdoc at a university, but there's also postdoc opportunities for our graduate students to know about at other universities, but also national labs and government agencies. And just in case anybody is more curious about those types of positions as well, you can actually reach out to me and I can connect you with some other individuals that can share more about what those experiences would be. But really, there's all kinds of experiences that you can do with a postdoc, and a lot of those are not even hindered whether or not you're a US citizen. You can still do a postdoctoral position at a lot of these different places, and there's just a little bit of paperwork to fill out and figure out. So any graduate student that is thinking about their next steps in their career and considering a postdoctoral position, there are a lot of opportunities that you just may not know about until you see that flyer or until you talk with your advisor about it. So I want to make sure that everybody in the audience knows that there are a lot of different ways that you can connect, and it's not necessarily one clear pathway. And so each of you have similar and different experiences going on in the research that you're doing right now. So give us a little bit of insight into what a typical workday is like being a postdoctoral researcher. And if you can, while you're explaining what that day is like, how is it any different from when you were a doctoral student, just a graduate student researcher? And so what types of differences could a student expect from graduate research to postdoc? And we'll start with Aishwarya.
Okay, so I think one of the major differences in terms of a graduate student versus a PhD, at least in the first couple of years, is obviously you don't need to do any classes or anything like that. And the other thing is, I personally don't feel that you're constantly being evaluated in terms of departmental presentations, or you don't have all other kinds of evaluations that PhDs go through. We are not being constantly evaluated. But yeah, I mean, there is a time, if you are on a project, there is a time crunch and you have to perform. But other than that, I think that's one of the major differences. You're not expected to participate in departmental activities. You could volunteer too, but then yeah, you have a lot more free time to pursue your research compared to a PhD student. But of course, I mean, if you would love to engage in other activities, you're always encouraged to, but it's not expected from you. I think that's one of the major differences, I feel.
Yeah. And what's it been like for you, Nitin?
Yeah, so being postdoc, and the difference I would say between the postdoc and the doctoral students, I believe you get a chance to work on an individual research. You get independence in terms of the thoughts, and your supervisors start thinking, the advisor who is with you, he start treating you like a individual researcher, and he will give you all the attention, or he'll give the he'll have that confidence that yes, you can also formulate the problem, you can also come up with solutions. So in that sense, the expectations are high as per the in comparison to the PhD and the post in comparison to the graduate student, I would say. So that's the one thing. Second thing, I feel during the postdoc, it's a transition position, to be honest. I never considered this as a permanent position, and nobody should be in the thought process that they are here to be a postdoc and they should devote 200% time in the postdoc only. So it's a transition period. So you need to focus on the research which is assigned to you. You need to give the best outcome, because you will be judged when you apply to the tenure track position, that how you carried this independent research during your postdoc. So this will be the one aspect which will be judged during your tenure track positions. Second thing, meanwhile, in this particular time, you need to grow as an individual. You need to involve in the many activities. Like if I take myself, I used to involve in the mentoring the grad student. I always involve in the classes. I always used to go to my supervisor's classes together with him so that I can see how he is teaching the student, how he is, I mean, believe me, I'm taking all the classes what my supervisor is taking, and whenever he is absent, I take that opportunity and I used to go and teach to the students. So this is how we start learning this environment, the new environment, how to teach a student, how to involve with the student. So like if you see my work style or my working as a postdoc, I'm core into the research and teaching both, because I try to involve as much as, but as Aishwarya said, nobody expect anything from the postdoc other than your research. You don't have any other expectation, but if you need to be successful in your academia career, or if you want to go in that industry, you need to involve with the process, you need to volunteer yourself and come, like you should not be like sitting just doing a postdoc work, the research work, and go back to your home. So I would say be active, or generally in a EACC we used to say be proactive rather than active. So that's important.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. What's been your day-to-day experiences, Ria?
Sure. So I love being a postdoc. I feel like I have lots of freedom. I get to design my days. So unlike Nitin, I don't have any teaching responsibilities with my postdoc. And so that's a lot of free time compared to being a graduate student when you were either going to class or TAing for a course, for example. And so, it's up to me to plan out my week. How much am I in the lab? How much am I working from home and writing? Nobody is keeping track of my time. But I need to be productive, and I'm going to get out of this position what I put into it. It does feel to me a lot like being, maybe in your last year of graduate school. At least for me, I had an advisor that also was pretty hands-off in graduate school. And so by that, fourth or fifth year, you know what you're doing. You have ownership of your project, and it's up to you to get yourself over the finish line. And so that's what I feel like the postdoc has been for me, except I had to start, day one sort of in that mindset of it's my project. I'm the one setting the direction. My advisors give me ideas and feedback. And certainly some, I guess, I don't independently set the direction, but it's up to me to set the pace often. And yeah, I'm trying to think. So most of my days, it's self-directed with the exception of perhaps group meetings or other project meetings that I can plan my days around.
Yeah. And Ala, what about your experiences day to day?
So, I mean, I think it's similar to everyone here. I think probably the thing that stood out to me the most between now and being a PhD student is how much I spend on my email. It just feels like every day I lose 2 hours just back and forth on emails. But that's also part of what everyone said, is your postdoc is sort of what you make it to be. So everyone ran away from teaching and I sort of ran into teaching. So I was like, I'm gonna teach a course and I want to be an instructor of record because I felt that's something that I would benefit from in my resume. I also just volunteered to different committees outside of Purdue, so within my own field. So that is a much higher flexibility and a place I wouldn't be able to take as a PhD student, because as a postdoc, you have your PhD, so it's much easier for other people to sort of put responsibility on you. And I think that's where the difference is the same thing with my advisors. I have more responsibility in a sense, more freedom, but also more responsibility. And it's the day is flexible, but also just packed. But that's sort of what everyone else said. You get out of it what you put in.
Exactly. And on that note of getting out what you put in, you're all thinking about the different types of careers that you want to have once this postdoc experience is over. What opportunities have existed for professional development as a postdoc? What does that look like, and how do you feel outside of the lab that you're preparing for your future careers? Nitin, do you want to start with that one?
Yeah, so in terms of the Purdue environment, if I say, I would say that we have a best environment. We have so many, I always a fan of a EACC circle, to be honest, engineering academic career circle. And I always advocate that everyone should, like who have the final year grad student, the first year postdoc, second year postdoc, they should go at least attend one summer course with ESCC, and they'll see the great transformation in their understanding, if especially when they're planning the career in the academia, because ESCC will prepare you for everything, like how to prepare the CV, how to prepare the teaching statement, research statement, everything, and diversity, inclusion, and everything. And you'll get to know with the how things will work. Even they'll help you how to search the applications, how to fill the applications. So this sort of information is given by the ESCC circle, which is one. And second, like I believe, like Lisa, she used to organize so many workshops for the postdocs, which is really good. I mean, everything she covers, the small thing, how to write grant writing, how to write NSF proposals and all, which is really good. Last year, I think Ria was there or not, if I like we got an opportunity to attend one grant writing workshop, which was sponsored by some other the speaker was from somewhere else, and like he gave us very detailed discussions on that. So I believe like everyone should attend these kind of workshops which is offered by the Purdue. Third event, I really remember the Butler Center, they used to do the event for the young professionals, and people should attend these events, because there you go how to prepare yourself for the tenure track position, how to prepare your documents for the tenure track position, what kind of like what sort of preparation you need when you get tenure track position, and how you complete the tenure track positions to the track position. So I mean, these sort of information is well developed by the Purdue. We have an environment of it, except I feel we need to use it, and everyone should attend these kind of event and go. Like for example, Purdue always organize the coffee hours for the postdocs, where we used to go meet with each other, interact with each other, know each other's problem. This is how we get some interdisciplinary idea. We will pursue them. So I think there are many opportunities to professionally develop yourself. You just need to grab it. You just need to like focus, and sometimes you need to manage your time. Until unless you will be able to manage the time, you won't be able to attend all these events, and you won't be professionally developed, because research you can do sitting alone doing some work, but if you need to develop your personality, you need to interact with the people. If you need to expand your horizon, then you need to go and meet, interact with the people. So I think we have a lot of opportunity at the Purdue, and people should just catch them and just enjoy that. Thank you.
Yeah, that was a great and thorough answer of a lot of the opportunities that are available. And I know that Dr. Lisa Nielsen does a ton of things for graduate students, but also really has her hands all over the things that are going on for the postdoc experience at Purdue as well. So with that thorough answer, do either of the three of you have any additional things that Nitin didn't mention that maybe you've experienced as professional development, or things that you've highlighted and worked on in your own journeys?
So one opportunity that I've taken advantage of outside of Purdue, so I mentioned I am a chemical engineer by training, and so the American Institute of Chemical Engineers, or AICHE, they have a future faculty mentoring program that kind of coincides with the annual meeting. But if you're going to be on the job market that year, they'll pair you up with a mentor, a faculty member at another university. So I got paired with someone who was in my research area, which was actually quite helpful, because he gave me advice. Like, he read over my packet. He said, you should definitely apply to these particular openings at these schools. And we've been meeting monthly over Zoom to just check in on that job application process. And so if there's something available like that in a professional society that you're a part of, I would encourage you to pursue that, because it'll grow your network outside of the universities that you've gone to.
Yeah, thank you for that. Any other perspectives of professional development?
I mean, some other professional development opportunities which I have come across are, if some of you are in chemistry or work on something similar to chemistry, ACS has a future faculty workshop, and they open up and it's generally towards the end of summer that they conduct the workshops. And a lot of different universities, I think, have these workshops, and attending the EACC workshop is definitely great. But then if you are looking to expand on networking, and if you want to first do some more networking, I think attending workshops at some of these universities. I think there was one future faculty fellowship only for people working on soft materials at Delaware, and yeah, some other universities. I think yeah, you could attend that just for networking. And
Yeah.
some societies like Chemical Engineering Society and BMES, the Biomedical Engineering Society, and the Materials Research Society have some future faculty candidate poster sessions, future postdoc poster sessions, which definitely you could attend as well.
Thanks for sharing those as well. And Ala, did you have any other things from your perspective? I know that a lot of these have already been mentioned in depth.
Yeah, I think everyone have basically covered everything, and even some things that I don't know. I think for me, the one thing I've used the most is growing my network and just talking to my network. I think that's where I got a lot of personal benefits. So like I talked to professors that I knew who just did mock interviews for me and reviewed my applications. And that was very beneficial, especially people outside of my department, or so at conferences, just being friends with other new faculty and just asking them, that has been very helpful.
Absolutely. And so talk a little bit about what your experiences have been, kind of your journeys to Purdue engineering. In your perspectives, how soon should a graduate student completing their studies be thinking about a postdoctoral position? Is that something that they should do early on, something once they're nearly done, or is it a wide range depending on your discipline? What has been your connection and thoughts on just how soon we should start thinking about this? If anybody wants to hop in, otherwise, just go around the room usually. So yeah,
I can go first. I think typically postdocs, there's plenty of opportunities in the sense of on hopping on a project, but the fellowships typically have specific deadlines. So a lot of big schools have their own fellowship programs, and you need to be aware of their deadlines. Most of them are pretty early, so they would fall around October, November. And if you want to get a fellowship that would start anytime the next year, you would have to have met that deadline. So that's an important thing to know. So I think in general, you would, within your last year, you should be looking for postdocs, especially if you know certain groups or projects you want to be part of. I applied for postdocs in very far-fetched areas that I thought would be cool, and I just emailed people a year before that. I was like, just let me know if anything comes up for you, because I'm very interested. And I think you can play postdocs very early, and there's a general sense of you can sort of say yes to a postdoc, and then you got a faculty position. You could still go do your postdoc and then delay your faculty position.
Yeah. Other thoughts on just how soon and maybe what thoughts that we should be thinking of as graduate students? Nitin, if you have anything.
Yeah, so as Ella mentioned, like postdoc preparations take a lot of time, and it depends, to be honest, field to field. Sometime you can be so lucky that you can land up in the postdoc maybe in 2 or 3 months, and sometime it takes almost a year. So it's better when you are preparing for any kind of a fellowship, like if you're applying to any fellowship, maybe a Fulbright fellowship or anything, it's always good to prepare yourself a year before, since this like complete review process take a lot of time. So it's better to prepare for it. But I would suggest generally, and nowadays after COVID especially, I really don't know about chemical and bio side, but when it comes to the civil engineering or mechanical or electrical engineering, the core branches, they have a huge decline in the number of projects, and like so you need to be well prepared, because the project postdocs are also getting, the numbers are down in the past 2-3 years. So you need to prepare well at least a year before, interact with the people. As Ella mentioned, the networks are the most important thing you should spend. I mean, this is my daily job. Generally, I spend at least 15 to 20 minutes of a day on my LinkedIn just to check with the people, talk to people, meet with them, and just check them that I am still connected with them or not. So that's very important. That's a good piece of advice, that you need to connect it with your networks. They can help you to land up in the postdoc. Second thing I would suggest, everyone should identify at least one conference, the core conference of their respective area, like if it is society, especially the society conferences, because they are more into the close group where the specific groups comes. Like, for example, I'm a geotech guy. I used to go in the Geo Congress. So in a Geo Congress, we used to meet almost every faculty members or the big people, I would say industry and the academia people come there. They don't hesitate to talk to them. I mean, generally this happens as a grad student. When we go, we just talk with our own peer group, just meet with our own peer group, just say hello to our friends and come back after presenting. Please don't do this mistake. I mean, when you're going to the any kind of a conference, you're spending a lot of money, go meet people, talk to them. I mean, they are really open to talk to you. There is no one is there like they won't be able to talk to you. They may be busy, they may give some other time to talk to you, but at least interact with the people, get in touch with them. They will be very helpful to you. I remember during last Geo Congress, I was there, and I met one professor. I should not name her, but she said, I read your academic package and it was really good, and you're going to be recommended for the next stage. I mean, directly she gave me that feedback. So it was really the best experience for me. So I would say everyone should meet in the, whenever they are going in conference, and prepare at least a year before. And don't write cold emails. Cold emails do not work in the postdocs. Trust me, it do not work.
That's a very good thing to know and think about as well. So thank you for that. Ria, do you have any perspective on just that timeline for graduate students?
Yeah, so I really liked Nitin's advice to go to conferences and meet people. And so I think, maybe by like your third year in graduate school, when you're giving a conference talk, you have something that you can talk about with the results, maybe a paper published. And then you can go to conferences and you can start to identify people that you might want to do a postdoc with. It's way too early to ask them about a position because they won't know funding or specific projects. But you can sort of get a sense of like, okay, this person is working in a really interesting area. Let me go to their talks. Let me go to their students' talks. Let me find their students at the poster session or whatever and ask them about what their advisor is like. How are they as a mentor? Because for me, that was something. Yes, I wanted to do good research, but I also wanted to be mentored well as a postdoc and join a group that was a good environment. And so starting early, I had built sort of a short list of 3 or 4 professors at various universities where I was like, I would love to work with them. And then once I get, 6 months to a year out, I'll start emailing them, reminding them that I met them at a particular conference. Maybe they came to my talk. And then say what opportunities, or ask, sorry, what opportunities do you expect to have in the next year? Please keep me in mind if something comes up.
Yeah. And what about you, Aishwarya?
I think all of them gave really good advice. The only other thing I would like to say is probably, the first thing is to determine if you want to do a postdoc. If you are on the fence, think about it. Postdocs, if you're willing to transition into an academic position, definitely go ahead and do a postdoc. It'll be really helpful. It'll help you gain independence, and it'll equip you with a lot of different skills. But then if you're still on the fence, think about it, especially for international students. I would say if you are doing a postdoc, please think about it before you go end up doing a postdoc because of the visa situation. It might be better if you're still on the fence to maybe think about it a little bit. And yeah, if you really want to go into industry, I don't think doing a postdoc is at all necessary. So I would definitely say think about it and only then do a postdoc. It's really difficult to transition from a postdoc into a new position, especially for international students. So I would definitely recommend them to give it a thought before they end up going into a postdoc.
Yeah, and you raise a really good point there of what value doing a postdoc position will play on the type of career that I want to do. And so, Ria, kind of want to start with you on this just because you're about to start at UT. In that interview process and everything, either things that you found in those conversations or maybe just your confidence level overall, what value do you think doing a postdoc after graduation played in your ability to successfully find that job?
Sure. I think the biggest thing is that, I needed more research experience, more publications, especially by the time I defended my PhD, only one of my papers had been published. And so, sometimes it takes a while to get those papers out. And so those, a lot of my PhD work came out while I was a postdoc. But in the interview process, right, you have to give a presentation about your research. I was able to present on both my PhD and my postdoc research to show that I had some breadth. I have skill sets and I can apply them to different sorts of problems. And then also, because being a faculty member, you have to mentor students, a postdoc is a fantastic opportunity to mentor not just undergrads like you might have been able to do as a grad student, but you can mentor graduate students as well. If your postdoc advisor, is amenable to that. And I know that I kind of help a couple of graduate students on some projects. It's very much their thesis project, but if I have some advice that's helpful, I'll jump in. And so it just gave me a lot more to talk about. I have, experiences at multiple universities now, so I have different perspectives on the structure of graduate programs and what am I looking for in a department that I will join. And then something I wanted to mention, not related necessarily to this exact question, but relating to other postdoc opportunities that might exist. And I apologize if we're going to get to this later. I wanted to make sure that it got said. I have not my personal experience, but I have a good friend who did a postdoc at a national lab, and she was on the fence if she wanted to do academia or not. And so that national lab postdoc gave her an opportunity to get some really good research experience outside of that university environment. And she has now transitioned to a staff scientist position at Oak Ridge. So she did her postdoc at Air Force Research Labs in Ohio. And now she's at Oak Ridge in Tennessee. And so that was an absolutely fantastic experience for her. And it confirmed what she wanted to do in a way that maybe going to a university wouldn't have.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that perspective too, just because even if you want to go into a faculty career, you don't have to do, like we said a little bit earlier, you don't have to do that postdoc position at a university. And some universities may value your experience at a national lab or a government agency as well. So there's, like we said, a lot of different opportunities. If you're curious about what those might be, you can always talk to your advisor, but you can also talk to me as well. And I'll make sure that everybody has my contact info after this, even though everybody always gets a bunch of emails from me anyway. And as Ala said earlier, spend most of your day sorting through which emails are important or not. My apologies if they don't seem as important, but I try to get the word out to all of you. And so kind of continuing in on that, and we can kind of balance both of those. Number one, the value of doing a postdoc position for your future, but then also just maybe some of your general experiences that you think are building confidence during this time. And so Aishwarya, if you would like to share just a little bit more about that as well.
So like Shreya said, it's a great opportunity for you to establish independence and at the same time mentor students. And the other thing which you would always be constantly be doing when you are a faculty member, hopefully in the future, is that you would be writing a lot of grants. So I think when you're a postdoc, you have some time and your advisor hopefully is very understanding and he views you as someone who is independent and someone who is very capable. So you can talk to your advisor about trying to help your advisor write some grants because your advisor is always there to help you out and review whatever you have written, and that way you can get some feedback. Because the advisor is invested in that grant, so that they would take that grant really seriously, and you would get a lot of feedback that way. So I think grant writing is a great opportunity that you can pick up when you're a postdoc.
Yeah. And what about you, Nitin?
Yeah, so like Ria mentioned and Aishwarya mentioned, I continue with the similar thing. Like when you are doing a postdoc, it's really important position. I always recommend for the transition period when you are planning to be in academia, even for the industry. I never discourage people to be in be a postdoc. So my point, like, please involve in the things. You need to start mentoring the students, take a lead, just go to your supervisor if you have some interest, write research grants. You may not be a PI and co-PI in some cases, but that learning will be really helpful. Even I have written one project and it was really, that learning nobody can give you, because at this stage your supervisor is a part of that project and he is taking all the interest in this project and you're helping him to write that project. So that's an important phase of your life. Devote your most of the time, and do not cheat with yourself, to be honest, because you get a lot of independence when you're doing a postdoc. Nobody is cautioning you every day, what are you doing, and nobody is evaluating you on certain parameters. So you have a lot of scope to do in your this particular position. Especially, I remember, if I say during this postdoc, I remember, and Ria will definitely agree with it. When I came here, I was having just a 2 page of a CV. I remember that CV and I presented in the EACC, and then I saw the CV of a Ria, Ishan, and 2 more, movie and 1 more guy. And right now I have a 12 pages of a CV, a detailed CV, because I back in India when I was there is a different professional culture, different things. So when you are in the different country, as an international student, especially when you're coming here, you need to learn everything. Even I used to write my personal details, and these people help me out that we should not write this information, we should not write this information. These informations are important. Even the small grant which you received, maybe a travel grant, that's important, you should mention in your CV. Generally we used to ignore, yeah, that's fine, but everything counts when you're applying to these kind of a position, and your CV speaks a lot. So this time is very helpful time to prepare all your documents, the academic package, and getting help from others, and also help to the people, so that you can learn. You need to learn how you will be in the after 2-3 years, how you will survive your life as academic position. So how you'll teach your students, how you'll guide your students, and also learn what you are not supposed to do during these tenure track positions. So that's also important. So I guess we should spend our time very nicely during our postdocs.
Absolutely. And finally, Ala, I also want to dig a little bit into what you said in your introduction about thinking about your future career. Want to do a faculty position, but since it's becoming more popular, there might be more opportunities in industry as well that you've started to see after doing the postdoc. So on one hand, kind of what has your experience been, but then on the other hand, if you could share, do you feel that doing a postdoc is also adding value to your prospects of an industry option after you're done with this as well?
Yeah, so I can answer the second part very quickly. I think part of your postdoc is to diversify your portfolio in a way. You're not going to get your postdoc in exactly the same PhD project that you have. And so a good postdoc is one where you apply something that you still learn something new, and you basically add a new branch to your research. And that's where it can be very beneficial in what you sort of pick your postdoc project to be, and sort of complete your resume. And you might end up with, so like, I'm focused on a very narrow project right now, which otherwise it's likely not to be funded because there isn't just that much literature on it. And that, in a sense, helps me. So I got contacted by a recruiter. It was like, we would like to interview, and I interviewed for 3 industry positions that just were mainly focused on the research I started at the end of my PhD, but then now that I'm focused on, and because I'm focused on it now, I have all these new ideas that I can talk to people of writing future proposals, but also now industry are interested in those new ideas. So that's been very useful to me in sort of jumping out. But that's also based on like each person's own preferences. I think in general, there's the jack of all trades or the master of one. In PhD, you can be very focused on a very narrow topic, and that's one direction. And then you could be applying one big science to a lot of different problems. And there's different ways of doing it, and figuring out where you fit in and getting the postdoc to fit within that scale would help. But in general, I don't think a postdoc in my experience, I haven't had any issues talking to people from industry, and the interest from, if anything, it sort of grew, because part of what I perceived from my interviews, it gives a sense that you are successful in multiple environments and you can work in different groups and still be productive. And that's very helpful and useful, to, especially because they're going to contact your advisors and ask them and talk to them. And having 3 or 4 people from different backgrounds, different places, different times in your career being able to say, yes, this person is good, you should work with him, is very beneficial.
Yeah, thank you so much for mentioning just that range there as well. With the last few minutes that we have here, I do want to open it up to our audience to ask any questions that they have. We do have one in the chat already, so do want to raise that first. And then anybody else, after we get done with that question, if you want to drop your questions into the chat, I can ask those to the panel, or if you would like to either raise your hand on here or unmute yourself, we can open it up that way as well. But the first one kind of plays on a little bit of what we were talking about in this last question of, is there a minimum number of papers or quality papers to get a postdoc position? One professor had mentioned that you need at least 5 papers in advanced materials at least for a specific position. So with that, is there a minimum number? But then also just making a statement for everybody to be aware. Each of you kind of touched on this a little bit, but for the audience, it is very important in a postdoctoral position that you do have some aspect of a pivot from your research that you did as a graduate student. A lot of labs, a lot of professors at other universities, they want to see that you are doing something in your postdoc that's either a little bit different or maybe a complete pivot from what you did before. That shows your range of knowledge and your willingness to learn new things. And a little bit of what Ala was saying there of, being a jack of all trades versus a master of just one. And so that's just one thing to consider as well as you're thinking about the future of, you're doing this right now for your PhD program, and that's going to make you an expert in that category. But for a postdoc, how would you pivot? How would you broaden your expertise or focus on something a little bit different that can make you more attractive to your future prospectus of a job? So again, back to this question, minimum number of any type of papers or anything that you need to make sure that your CV has beforehand. Anybody want to start with this? Otherwise, we can go one by one again.
I can start. So, this thing is a little difficult to answer. I don't know what the minimum number of papers means. I know some departments have, or some professors have set their own standards. So it's totally dependent on the professor. And you should know that your PhD advisor might have a different standard for graduation versus your future postdoc advisor who has a different standard. So if that doesn't match, then probably you won't get that postdoc position. But then again, the reasonable number of papers in any field depends on the kind of work you put in to get put in. And I think for people work in bio or even a lot of other core, I think areas such as in physics, it's really difficult to get a lot of papers. And speaking of papers in advanced materials, it's a really highly ranked journal, and 5 papers as a first author, I don't know if you have, then I mean, go ahead, and all the best to you. But then for me, it's more important for me to have first author papers than to be the 10th author in an advanced materials paper. That's what I value the most. But it totally depends from person to person. It also depends a lot on what you work on. Not all papers, not all fields, not all work end up in advanced materials. It doesn't mean that that work is not important. Every work is important. So, yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that. Any additional perspectives from anyone to share?
Yeah, I just would probably just mention that it's field specific, so different fields will have different amount of papers in different journals. But to just give some perspective of like, because me and everyone around me who graduated went into a postdoc. Some people went into a postdoc with 10 papers and some went in postdocs with 1 or 2 papers published. It did not matter. And some people got MIT postdocs with 4 papers. It wasn't really a criteria as much as the interview when you talk about your work, and you could have 3 papers that are pending. And that's, yeah.
Yeah, thank you for those perspectives. Anything else before we move on to another question? So I know that, is it Kushagra?
Yeah. Yeah, my question to the panel is postdoc in a university more valuable than postdoc in a national lab if one's objective is to become a tenure track faculty member?
So I can answer from the advice I got since I had offers from both. National labs, based on your project, you might have to sign an NDA on some certain things. Some certain projects have security clearance, which means by the time you're able to publish or discuss these things, it could be a few years. And that could look as a gap in your resume. Obviously, good schools or good people reviewing your applications would understand that, but that's not always the case. And that can be one of the differences. In other cases, I don't think it makes as much of a difference as long as you can maintain a network. At the national lab, you won't be able to like fill in teaching and mentoring as much as you would at the university. So if that's a gap in your resume, then universities, but you could also join a national lab as there's sort of like a big center and a big heavy equipment that only this national lab have. Being able to use that new knowledge that you wouldn't get otherwise could be beneficial. But I think that the main thing to me that stood out in difference is the ability to present and discuss. Some of the projects you would not be able to present anything for the next 3-4 years. So I worked on a national lab project in my master's, and I could only talk about the results in 2020 after 4 years of when the work was completed.
Yeah. No, that's a good perspective to consider. Of it really will depend on what gaps that maybe still exist for you after graduating with your PhD. If you need more experience teaching and mentoring, or if you need more experience researching a specific thing. And so I appreciate that perspective. In the interest of time and getting through some more of these questions that we have entered in the chat. And this is a question from Sana. Are there fellowship or co-op opportunities for postdocs? And I know that many of you are on a postdoc fellowship. And is there an equivalent industry connection at that type of level instead of a fellowship or co-op opportunity for postdocs? And if I made that any more confusing, Sana, you can feel free to unmute and clear up anything that I said differently.
Hi, so I just wanted to, I don't know if I worded it correctly, but I wanted to know if there was, what kind of connections to industry do we have at postdoc level? I know that postdocs are usually funded by some kind of grant, and some of them may be coming from the industry. But the way when you're in PhD, you have options to apply for fellowships when you're already in there. So once you join a postdoc, is it possible to get connected with industry other than the ones that are funding your current research?
Yeah, I think conferences can be a really good opportunity to interact with industry folks. in your area. And so hopefully now you have new results from your postdoc. You can take to a conference. You might be interacting with a different, set of companies than you were as a PhD student. I don't know of any like internship type opportunities available. Since postdocs are typically fixed term contracts anyways, your advisor probably wouldn't want you to like leave for 3 months in the middle of it and attempt to come back. But there certainly will be opportunities to interact with industry. And that's something, if you are looking for that, ask your advisor, your potential postdoc advisor, what connections they have. And that could be a deciding factor in which group you join for a postdoc.
Cool, thanks.
Yeah, and thank you for that perspective again, Ria. The next one that we have here is, balancing a little bit of doing a postdoc at a major university for a few years, or going to maybe a smaller school or a less highly ranked school, or even an R2, and doing a faculty position there and trying to get more experience as an instructor before going off to another university for faculty positions. I know a lot of that will be dependent on personalities and opportunities available, but do any of you have any opinions or perspectives on something like that?
Yeah, I'll take this. So like it totally depends, to be honest. Like doing your research in the R1 Institute and then going back to R2 Institute just to learn some teaching qualities, I would say. But rather I will suggest, instead of it's a game, to be honest, but rather I'll suggest like be at the R1 Institute if you are getting a chance, and try to volunteer yourself with your professor, that if you can take few classes in the absentia, or if you can mentor some students during your state, the R1 student, though. But if you want to come to the academy, I don't think about that you can get the experience from a specific institute for the teaching, specific institute from the R1. From one institute, you can get the complete package, but at the same time, you need to volunteer yourself. So, don't hesitate to ask. And trust me, your advisor is well known that you are not here for the permanent position. You want to transit, you need a transfer to the academic position, and they will definitely help you to train you in the academic, all the aspects, because it's a pride for them also. Like when you work with them and you go to the academia, they also feel pride that their students or their postdocs are working as a faculty position. So I don't think so. That's my perspective. Somebody can have a different opinion, because it's completely subjected how you have been trained before and what kind of training you need in the teaching. But if you're just going to write in the resume that you have taught this subject, I don't think so it matters much. In the initial career, it matters how you can present your teaching styles and teaching skills. So that's my point. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And looks like we have time for one more question, just a little bit about mentoring at conferences or other mentorship opportunities, how to apply, maybe what to expect, and how to learn from others and gain perspectives in that regard as well.
Yeah, since I brought it up earlier, maybe I'll start with this one. And so I would say if you're a member of a society, search your society's website. Just search, for me, ASCHE mentoring program, see what pops up. If you're a student member, they'll typically send emails about these things with the deadlines, how to apply. In terms of what to expect from them, I think with most mentorship opportunities, the more you put in, the more you will get out. If you don't talk very much when you meet your mentor, they're not going to be as motivated to give you extra advice. But if you come to them with specific questions and say, this is an area I want to grow in, what other opportunities do you recommend I apply for example, I think they would be more willing to help you. And so I guess how to apply, what to expect. Yeah, search your websites, find out the deadlines. It's going to be very field specific and program specific.
Thank you for that. And thank you all for your perspectives. I know that we're here at our time limit of everything, and some need to get back to class or other responsibilities for the rest of the day. So I don't want to keep anybody too long, but I do want to thank each of our 4 panelists for sharing your perspectives, your willingness to hop on here and talk a little bit with us and let our graduate students know just what your experiences have been, what types of things they can expect, and what they should be preparing for their own future careers. And so again, thank you all. Thank you for our audience for participating today as well and learning a little bit from our panelists. And thank you to our panelists for everything that you have done. Good luck in your next steps and really appreciate you. If anybody has any questions about anything related to this topic or any next steps, please feel free to reach out to me. I'll put my email in the chat, making sure that you have that as well. But thank you all, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.